Hey everybody, this is Anthony from VR Game Rankings, and welcome to another episode of our daily vlog series. We're on episode 23. This is Wednesday, November 1st. Yes, we've started a brand new month, so you know what that means? Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Okay, so you're probably thinking, rabbit, 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 what the hell are you talking about? Well, actually, I remember there's this radio show I used to listen to way back in the days. It was called Don and Mike. It was the Don and Mike show, and I think they were based in Washington, D.C. area. And Don, every time it would be the first day of the month, one of the hosts, Don, would always say, rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. And he said that it was this East Coast thing that people would do where on the very first day of the month, right when you wake up in the morning, you have to say rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. And if you do, you have good luck for the rest of the entire month. So I hope everybody, when you woke up today, I hope you said rabbit, 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 so you could have good luck for the rest of the month. I know I did it. Anyway, I mean, I live on the West Coast, and so this was just kind of a weird thing, but I've been doing this rabbit, rabbit, rabbit thing for a while, and I notice when I do say it on the first day of the month, I seem to have good luck. So I'm going to continue to do it. But yeah, we're in a brand new month. You know, we just finished October, and October was such a great month. I talked about it yesterday about all the incredible games that we had in October. And November is shaping up to be a very interesting month as well. All we have to do is take a look at some of the big games that are coming in November. Obviously, on the 14th, we have LA Noire, the VR case files. We have From Other Suns that's coming on the 14th. And then 2 days later, Payday 2, the open beta for Payday 2 on November 16th. That's going to be huge. And then 1 day after that, on November 17th, Skyrim VR. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Skyrim VR in just a second here. But Skyrim VR, we're only like 16 days away from Skyrim VR. And I know it's on PlayStation VR and it might not be the dream that we're all dreaming about. But still, it's still a huge, huge game. And I'm still incredibly excited for that. And then also, a little bit later in the month of November, around the 22nd, we have The Impatient for PlayStation VR. This is another super massive games VR release. They're the creators, of course, of Rush of Blood on PlayStation VR, which is probably considered one of the 5 best PlayStation VR games there is. An incredible game, Rush of Blood. Super massive games, has both The Impatient on November 22nd. They also have Bravo Team, which I think is December 6th. So they have 2 big games coming out within a few weeks of each other. So these are a few of the games that I know of in November. I'm sure there's some other ones that are slipping my mind at the moment, but we've got a lot of good stuff here in the month of November, so we got a lot of good things to look forward to. So let's go into the Skyrim thing real quick. Now, recently in San Francisco, they had a press event. It was a private press event where IGN and a bunch of different outlets were invited to try out Skyrim VR, which is going to be coming out, you know, just a couple of weeks from now, right? And so Upload VR got to try it out. IGN got to try it out. Unfortunately, they didn't send me an invite. I could have drove up to San Francisco. Hey, it's only a 2-hour drive, so I don't know why I didn't get the invite. That kind of sucked. But basically, a lot of the people that got hands-on time with Skyrim at this press event, they said that this was a completely new build from the build that they had been playing before, and that the whole game was there, that they basically felt like this was maybe the final build of the game, and this is basically the gold disc of the game. It's basically done as far as they're concerned in terms of the build that they've played, because we've always kind of heard that a lot of the demos that people were encountering with Skyrim VR was a really old build, and so maybe some of the complaints weren't necessarily justified. But we didn't get a ton of information from the demos that people were able to get at this private press event. Although we did learn two different things about it. Okay, so the smooth locomotion option, it is in there. So this has been confirmed. Smooth locomotion is available. And the way it's going to work is if you're using two move controllers, your left move controller, you basically aim it where you want to go and you just hit the move button and you'll start to move in that direction. And that's basically the way it works. And then to switch your, to snap turn your view is on the right controller. It's one of the face buttons. You hit that and it snaps your view. Now, I've played Solus Project on PlayStation VR not too long ago. And I actually should go back to that and play it some more because I only played it a little bit. And the first time I played it, it didn't really... I didn't think it was a very good port, in my opinion, but I didn't give it that much time, so I can't really criticize it too much. But it does have that locomotion method where you just kind of aim the controller and you push the button and it works. And this is what I've said. I've talked about this before on past VR Roundtable episodes. I've gotten into arguments back and forth with Steve where I said, Steve, I don't understand. Why can't you just take a controller, aim it where you want to go, you hit a button and you go that direction? Yes, I know you have to sacrifice a button, but is that the end of the world? And Steve kind of complained about it. Now, one of the complaints that Steve has, and it's a valid complaint, one of the complaints he had is that if you're controlling your direction with this left hand, then you can't use that left hand to do other things in combat. So you can't move and fire an arrow at the same time. And yeah, that is true. And that is probably the biggest stumbling block here, is that you can't really move in a certain direction and fire an arrow or swing a sword. So you could, but you're one-handed. So you could move, say, with your left hand, and in your right hand you could have a sword, and so you could move and then slash your sword, but you can't do like a bow and arrow routine because your left hand is taken. Now, you can also, of course, play this with a DualShock 4 controller, and if you play it with the DualShock 4 controller, you can do everything that you could do in the flat version of the game, but you could still have your headset on and you can still be in the world. And this is not necessarily a terrible way to play this game. I don't know which version is going to be better. I would think the move controllers would put you into the world more because it's your hands, it's the one-to-one tracking. I think that would put you into the world more. But when I was playing Resident Evil 7 is a DualShock 4 game. And one of the things about that is you can stand up when you're playing that game. You stand up, you have your headset on, and if you're going to move forward, you just push forward. And if you're going to go that way, I would physically turn my body and just push the controller that way. And because it's just using the DualShock 4, all it has to track is your headset. So I was able to play Resident Evil 7 where I was turning around in all different directions because it was tracking my headset. It didn't have to worry about the controller because the controller has the IMUs and the sensors in it, and it's not tracking it in physical space. It's just tracking the orientation basically. And so you could play Resident Evil 7 standing up and physically turn and then just use the stick to push forward like that, and it played very well. Now, you don't have the individual hands, for holding a gun and opening the door like that, and so a little of the immersion is taken away there. But it's going to be interesting to find out when we get Skyrim VR and when we get some playtime with it, which version, which method is actually going to be the better method to play the game. I think the way it might work out is that when you first get Skyrim VR, you're probably going to want to play it with the moves and kind of be more immersed in it. But I think after you get over the initial joy of just being in a world like Skyrim in VR, as watered down as it might be on the PlayStation VR, it's still going to be pretty incredible. But I think once you get over that initial honeymoon period with the game, because Skyrim, you could play this thing for 100 hours, right? So, it's an incredibly long game. The whole entire game is there. Now, mods, this is another news story. Mods will not be available for the VR mode, at least initially. So at launch, there will be no mods. I don't think this is a big surprise. I don't think this is anything earth-shattering. I don't think anybody was really expecting that right away. We know that with Fallout 4 VR, we're not going to get mods for some time, if ever. So that's not a huge surprise there. But I think when you first get Skyrim, you probably want to try it with the Move controllers. You want that agency. But then as you play it more and more, you might realize, you know what, I'm actually going to play this with the DualShock, because then I can fire my arrows and move at the same time, and that's okay. I won't have that super immersion with each individual hand, but it will still be pretty interesting. So Skyrim VR, man, I'm pumped. It's only 16 days away. November 17th, we get Skyrim VR. The Impatient on November 22nd is another huge one. And LA Noire. I think LA Noire is something that isn't getting a lot of publicity, but for all of us that have played The Invisible Hours, for all of us that have played the Blade Runner 2049 Memory Lab, or there's just a number of experiences that I've played recently where they're taking these characters and they're putting it into the world, and it just gives you that environment. It just gives you that feel. And with LA Noire having these really realistic human-looking characters, it's kind of like full motion video that's been converted basically to like a cartoon kind of a look. The technique that they used, I think that is going to work absolutely fantastic in VR. I think it's going to be incredibly impressive, just like The Invisible Hours was incredibly impressive. So really looking forward to LA Noire on November 14th, and that's a lot closer than Skyrim. Okay, so pretty much went through all of that. Okay, let's get into the Vive Focus, or the Vive M. Okay, so we know that a lot of these VR companies are looking to make standalone headsets for the mobile market, and the idea is they want a cheap headset, like $199 or less, that has everything you need already in the headset, and it's just a one-time deal, and to get people into VR on a lower level. And so we know Oculus, of course, has the Oculus Go. It's $199, supposedly coming early in 2018, maybe spring 2018. Well, HTC has their own thing. They have the Vive Focus, or the Vive M. Now, according to some Chinese news websites, this will be launched in the Chinese market on November 14th. They're going to have a Vive Developer Conference in Beijing on November 14th, and it's anticipated that at this conference they're going to unveil this headset officially. And I'm not sure if it's going to be like on sale that same day, but it's like officially going to be unveiled, and this is the beginning of the Vive Focus, or the Vive M. In the Chinese market, they're calling it the Vive M, I believe. Now, it's going to feature a Snapdragon 835 processor, which is the same processor that is in the Galaxy S8. And it does have this inside-out positional tracking. They're using the tracking that Qualcomm has come up with, and of course the Qualcomm Snapdragon processor. Now remember, Qualcomm, this is maybe like a year or so ago, they kind of have this reference design for this inside-out tracking with their processor, the heat, the whole thing for this all-in-one, and this is kind of what this is. This is a Vive branded version of this Qualcomm design, basically. It's very similar to the Microsoft mixed reality headsets, where Microsoft came up with a reference design, and you could get the headset from Dell or Acer or Lenovo or Hewlett Packard, but it's all going to be basically the reference design. They're all going to be the same, and that's kind of the same thing with some of these Qualcomm mobile headsets, and the Vive M is one of these mobile headsets. So as far as the games for the Chinese market, the Viveport is going to be the content distribution platform for the Vive M. We don't know when the Vive Focus is actually coming stateside to the USA, or more details as far as that goes. I'm not that interested in mobile VR, because I just don't imagine that experiences that you're going to have on these things are going to be that impactful. But I think it's good. It's good for VR in general. I like the idea that this is 6 degrees of freedom, supposedly, with this inside-out tracking that Qualcomm has here. And I think it's going to put the whole thing together and be quite interesting. So I'm definitely looking forward to how all of that works out. I'm sorry, I got distracted because my furnace just kicked off here. I need to turn off my heater before I do my show. It's starting to get cold in Sacramento. Let me tell you, every morning it's cold as hell. Another quick little news story we'll get into is Brookhaven Experiment. So this game, you know how so many different VR games, they're always getting updates, you know, a little update here, a little update there. Brookhaven Experiment, I don't know the last time this game has gotten an update, but it got an update. It was released yesterday on Halloween. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to get into this game. I've actually never played Brookhaven. Excuse me. I've never played Brookhaven on my Oculus Rift headset, and this is something I need to try, because the thing about the Oculus Rift is, remember, they only really assume that you have those 2 sensors, and so that's why you get into so many different Oculus Rift experiences where you get this message that says turn around and face your sensors, because they think the average Oculus Rift person has 2 sensors. They don't assume that you have 3 or 4 sensors. And so I'm wondering how Brookhaven is going to work on the Oculus Rift. I'm hoping that there's some type of option you can go into to activate a 360 room scale, because that's what Brookhaven is all about. Brookhaven is a 360 game. That's what the whole thing is about, and it's really about constantly looking behind you. That usually wherever you are in Brookhaven, you're standing in a certain spot, but zombies and monsters can come from possibly 8 or 9 different locations completely surrounding you, and you have to constantly check all of these locations, and that's what it's all about. So I haven't tried that on Oculus yet, and so I'm curious to see how that works out. But with this new update, I definitely want to try it. So what has been added with this new update? Well, new survival levels. There's a radio tower survival level, and there's the Dark Home Manor survival level. So that's new content. You know, that's some legit new content. There's a new weapon. It's called the Falcon. It's a crossbow. There's a new throwable item, an auto turret that I guess you could throw, and then it becomes an auto turret and starts taking out zombies and stuff. There's some new ammo types. There's a tracer ammo. There's a toxic ammo. There's new enemies and bosses in both the campaign and survival modes. I'm super hyped about that. I want to see what these new enemies are. I'm used to most of the enemies in Brookhaven. I have a problem with the bug enemies, but the zombies and stuff don't bother me too much. The very first time you play Brookhaven, they'll bother the hell out of you. I remember I was scared of this game for the longest time. I wouldn't even go into Brookhaven. I thought it would just freak me out to the 12th degree. I didn't even want to mess with it. I finally got into it and finally started playing it, and I fell in love with it. I just love Brookhaven. Various bug fixes, polish, and gameplay tuning. Okay, and the person that did, when they announced this update, they said that there could be some additional bugs and stuff from this update that they're testing. So if you notice anything weird, go ahead and message them about it, and they'll try to get that fixed right away. But yeah, we do have a Brookhaven Experiment update. The last little news story I have, Netflix is bringing Stranger Things, the VR experience, to PlayStation VR, but we don't have a date for this. Now, I remember a long time ago, I think this might have been at Comic-Con or something, they had a they had a Stranger Things VR experience, and I heard a lot about it, and the thought was that it was going to come to headsets and stuff at a later point. That we didn't hear anything about it. It completely disappeared. Well, now it's coming back, and it is going to be on PlayStation VR. Now, Oculus has a Stranger Things Face Your Fears experience for the Gear VR, but not for the Oculus Rift. And so I don't know that if you have a Vive or you have a Rift, you're going to be able to experience this Stranger Things VR experience, other than maybe getting a 360 video version of it and watching it in a normal video player, but I don't know that you're going to actually get like a specific version for the Rift or for the Vive. I've been watching the new season of Stranger Things, and you know what? I like the show. I really do like the show, but it's almost like they're trying too hard to be in the 80s, you know, with the arcade machines. And it's almost like they're just going too freaking hardcore to, like, I appreciate what they're doing, but it's almost like they're trying too hard. You know, I don't know if you understand what I mean by that, but as a child of the 80s, as somebody that grew up in that era, I appreciate the cars, and I appreciate their smoking cigarettes at work, and all of the things that happened back in the 80s, and the arcade machines and all of that. But I don't know, it seems like they're trying a little bit too hard, but that might just be me. It's still a good show, still an interesting show. Okay, so before we get out of here, now remember, I'm going to just do like 25-minute episodes going forward, and we're just going to try doing that for a while instead of these 35-minute episodes. Got a lot of requests to shorten the show a little bit, so we're just going to try to stay around 25 minutes. So I only got about 5 more minutes left. Now, I will say I played Stifled. So yesterday I was telling you guys that I reached out to Gatai Games to get a review code for Stifled, and I was able to get a review code for Stifled, and I tried it yesterday. However, I have to say I only played about 40 minutes. I did not get very much time in it. I was hoping to go back into it later last evening, but my PlayStation VR is in the living room, and of course last night was Halloween. We had some stuff going on in the living room. I just wasn't able to get back to my PlayStation VR and try it again. So I've only played 40 minutes of Stifled. But what I will say is that if I had a good buddy, okay, that called me up and said, "Hey, Anthony, I heard you got Stifled. I have a PlayStation VR. I'm thinking about buying it. Should I buy it? Should I buy it?" I would tell that buddy, nah, I don't think you want to buy this, okay? So I'm not going to say that it's a bad game, and I'm not reviewing. I've only played 40 minutes of the game. But from my first look at the game, the thing that struck me about it is I think the concept is better than the execution. So the idea of Stifled, if you don't know what Stifled is all about, Stifled is this game where you're kind of like in darkness, okay? But if you make a noise, like it uses the microphone, if you make a noise, it kind of lights up your environment a little bit. And if you just whisper, it just barely you hardly see anything. But if you make a really loud noise, it really lights up your environment. And so it's this play of how much noise you make with your voice, with your mouth, and then it kind of lights up the environment. But the downside is there's creatures, there's enemies, and the more noise you make, the more they know where you are and they can come after you. So that's kind of the premise of the game, which I thought was an incredibly cool idea. And the screenshots and stuff that I've seen of the game make it look really cool. It has this kind of Sin City aesthetic to it, with everything is kind of black, white, and gray. Well, really black and white, and then there's red. There's like bright instances of red, and whenever you see these really red areas, you know that there's an enemy in that area, and you've got to be quiet, you've got to be careful when you're in that area. And the problem that I really had with this in my first initial play session with it is, first of all, if you're going to make a game that's centered around the idea of being in darkness, the problem with this is that our headsets don't get dark. They don't get that dark. Like, even in total darkness, you can see the Murrah. You know, you see all these little grains. It's almost like little tiny green grains. Like, there's people on Reddit that have said, is there grains in my lenses? Are my lenses messed up? No, that's just the Murrah. That's just the fact that it doesn't get completely pitch black dark, and we don't have headsets that can do that yet. So it's kind of hard to make a game all about darkness when it doesn't get completely dark. You don't get that darkness. And then also, when I was playing it, PlayStation VR does a pretty good job of sealing out light, but some light comes in from the bottom, and you almost need to be in like a pitch black sensory deprivation chamber if you're going to play Stifled the right way. And I wasn't in that kind of a situation when I played it. The other thing is that the combat, I encountered one enemy creature in my first 40 minutes with the game, and the combat reminded me of Oregon Quarter from the standpoint that it just wasn't very good. Okay, the combat was kind of like it just wasn't that great. Basically, what I did, there was this like weird baby creature, okay? This weird baby creature with a big giant baby head, but kind of like a monster looking baby thing that kind of looked like it was on fire or like it was covered with lava. And it was kind of walking around and making weird baby noises and stuff. And the only thing I could do to fight this thing, there would be rocks on the ground. I could pick up the rock, and you just pick up the rock, and then the rock is just here, and then you hit a button and you just throw the rock. So and you throw the rock and you can hit the baby thing and I guess cause damage to it, and eventually I guess you can kill it. I wasn't able to kill it the first time that I encountered this. I ended up dying, and then after that I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop my play session at this point. But it's $20. It's not a horrible game. It's not a horrible game. I'm not trying to say Stifled is bad. I'm sure there's going to be some people that get Stifled and they're like, oh, this is really awesome. This is a great game. I'm not exactly feeling it right now, but again, I've only been in the thing for 40 minutes. I plan on playing it some more today. I want to try to get a better feel for it, and then I'll probably have more of an opinion tomorrow after I have some more time with it. I don't want to judge it too quickly. There were certain moments when I was in there and I was making noise and it was lighting up this hallway, and the sound of everything. Sound is a very important part of this game, and there were some cool moments where I was like, oh, this is kind of sweet, but it didn't last very long. Graphics are kind of basic, it's very basic graphics. Nothing super incredible is going on here. So I don't know. I mean, I was hyped for Stifled coming into this. I thought Stifled was really unique. I thought it was an interesting idea. And after playing it, I don't quite have as much of a hype level for it. But anyway, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for episode 23 of our daily vlog series for Wednesday, November 1st. And of course, I will catch you guys tomorrow. Take it easy.